Hi, y'all. My name is Amanda Gomez. I'm from Arlington, Texas, and I'm going to be talking about the podcast I listened to titled The American Life, The Problem We All Live, Part 1 and Part 2. Upon starting Part 1 of the podcast, I quickly learned that the bad schools were mostly Black and Latino, while the good schools were mostly white. In the St. Louis area, nearly 1 in 2 Black children attend schools in districts that perform so poorly that the state had stripped them of all full accreditation. Only 1 in 25 white children are in a district like that. That's 1 in 2 Black kids and 1 in 25 white kids. In podcast 1, we learned about desegregation. Lower income students, mostly Black students, were brought to a higher income school where the population of students was predominantly white. White parents felt threatened because their children had been doing well in the school and were concerned that the new students coming from the low-income school would negatively affect the children's education. The parents had no choice in this matter and they were forced to accept the Black children. When this happened, I believe assimilation was taking place. In other words, the white culture was a dominant culture while the Black students were forced to conform. In podcast 2, integration was taking place. White students were voluntarily being placed in amazing renovated magnet schools that were predominantly Black and in Black neighborhoods. In this circumstance, I believe modified culture of pluralism, otherwise known as acculturation, was taking place. Students maintained their own culture while integrating and learning about the culture of others. This created a beautiful picture and a stronger learning environment. Throughout both podcasts, I felt disappointed that the main issue in both circumstances was hatred. Individuals seem so quick to judge and stereotype others. This especially becomes evident in podcast 1 when the predominantly white school does not want the Black school students to transfer over. The most hateful comments were heard coming from the parents who did not want the low-income or Black students to move to their school. I believe that it makes such an impact on the students when the parents teach their children to not be okay with accepting others. Students learn to label and judge others when their parents are not accepting. In podcast 2, the parents voluntarily send their kids to diverse schools, consequently making their children non-judgmental and loving. Students that are raised and encouraged to learn about different cultures are the most respectful and knowledgeable. When I am a teacher, I hope to educate my students about different cultures. I hope to work for a school that provides students with opportunities to voluntarily join clubs where students can learn about food, music, arts, and the traditions of different cultures around the world. Ignorance is a darkness of the mind that can only be conquered by education. The traditional aspect of education is to prepare all children for the future. This topic focuses on the politics and the money of the education in the United States, where low-income areas want better education and high-income areas want to keep the low-income students out. It is essentially a cat-and-mouse game that does nothing but hurt the students' educations. However, it is our job as future educators to remember what is truly important: our students, the example we set, and how we can educate them to view others as purely human beings instead of labels. I like to end this with a quote taken from the second podcast by a teacher who took the stand to the Supreme Court regarding issues of desegregation. Open quote, "I think that children can overcome the stigma of poverty. I think children can overcome the stigma of their ethnicity, but what they cannot overcome is the stigma of separation. That is like a damn spot in their being and their self-image. And that's what segregation does to children. They see themselves as part and separate because of the language they speak, because of the color of their skin, the origin of their parents." End quote. Ultimately, we are all one.